Welcome, dear one. Find yourself comfortable now and let the weight of the day begin to fall away. Let your body settle a little deeper into whatever softness is holding you, and let your eyes close gently, without effort. Just breathe slowly and feel the quiet gathering around you. Tonight, as you drift, you will gently come to understand something of the old and beautiful wisdom of the Tao, and you do not need to concentrate at all. Simply let the words wash over you, soft as water, and let the understanding arrive on its own, like a dream already forming at the edges of the mind. There was, a very long time ago, in a land of mist and mountains and long rivers moving slowly to the sea, a way of thinking about the world that was different from any other. It did not begin with a god speaking from a bright and tremendous sky. It did not begin with a great army or a powerful king. It began, as the wisest things so often begin, in quietness, in stillness, in the soft and patient observation of the way things are. The old teachers of this tradition notice something that is easy to overlook when the mind is busy. They notice that the world, left to itself, knows what to do. A river does not decide to reach the ocean. It simply flows, following the shape of the land, finding the lowest places, moving, without effort, through the path that opens naturally before it. A tree does not try to grow. It simply grows, slowly, quietly, reaching in the direction of warmth and light without straining, without forcing anything. The seed does not struggle to become the blossom. It rests in the dark earth, and in its own time and in its own way, it opens. This was the central feeling, the central understanding of the old way that the Chinese philosophers called the Tao. The Tao is usually translated into English simply as the way, and yet that translation hardly does it justice, because the Tao is not a road you walk on. It is not a path someone else has laid down for you to follow. The Tao is something more like the deep current that runs through all of existence, the invisible tendency that causes things to move as they move and to be as they are. It is the something that breathes beneath everything, quiet and unhurried, holding the world together without effort, the way sleep holds the body together without asking anything of you at all. Let your shoulders drop a little now, if they have crept up toward your ears. Let your jaw soften. Let the air move in and out of you slowly, in its own rhythm, without any effort from you. There is a very old story told about the man most closely associated with this ancient understanding. His name was Lao Tzu, which simply means the old master, or the old child. And already in that name there is something worth noticing, because the Taoists saw in children something that most grown minds have quietly lost. Not innocence exactly, though that too, but something deeper, a kind of naturalness, a way of simply being in the world without pushing against it. Children fall asleep easily. They cry when they need to cry, and then, a moment later, they are content. They do not carry yesterday into today. They do not rehearse tomorrow in their minds, while the night is still and quiet. They live the way the river flows, entirely in the present moment, entirely in the body, entirely in the now. Lao Tzu, they say, was very old when he decided to leave the world behind. He had spent many years as a keeper of archives in the royal court, surrounded by scrolls and records and the business of human affairs. And then, one slow and quiet day, he decided to go. There is no dramatic moment in the telling of it. There is no conflict, no great crisis, no scene of urgency. The old man simply knew that it was time to leave, the way an autumn leaf simply knows when to release itself from the branch. And so he climbed onto the back of a water buffalo, gentle and slow as the animal itself, and he rode toward the western mountains, toward the wilderness, toward the quietness beyond the edge of the known world. At the border of the kingdom, the story goes, a gatekeeper stopped him. The gatekeeper looked at this very old man on his very slow buffalo and asked him, before he passed through, if he would write down whatever he knew so that the knowledge would not be lost. And the old man paused, and perhaps he smiled, because he understood the deep strangeness of what was being asked of him. He was being asked to put into words something that lives, by its very nature, beyond words. He was being asked to capture the water in a net, and yet he agreed. He sat down and he wrote, and what he wrote was only 81 short passages or chapters, a small and quiet book that could be read in an afternoon, and which has been read and pondered and loved for more than 2,000 years. This book is called the Tao Te Ching, which might be translated as the Book of the Way and its Power, and it is one of the most translated and treasured books in all of human history. It begins with a line that is immediately and softly and deliberately impossible. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Even in its first breath, the book is telling you something. It is telling you that the deepest truth cannot be trapped in language. It can only be pointed toward. It can only be felt, the way you feel warmth from a fire without being able to hold the fire in your hands. And so, everything that follows in that little book, and everything that follows in the long tradition of Taoist storytelling, is a pointing, a gentle gesture in a direction. A soft lamp held up in the dark, not to show you the whole world, but to let your eyes begin to adjust, to let you see slowly, slowly, the shapes of what was always already there. The body is very comfortable now, the breath is slow, the room is quiet and warm, and the night is deep around you, and there is nowhere at all to be, nothing at all to do, no thought that needs your attention tonight. You can let everything go. The thoughts that come can drift past like small clouds against a very dark and very still sky. You do not need to follow them. You do not need to hold them. You can simply let them pass. There is a story told in the Taoist tradition about a cook who worked in a great kitchen and who had been preparing meals for many years. One day, a prince came to watch him work, and the prince was amazed because the cook moved through his work as if he were dancing. His cleaver moved through the joints of the meat without any effort, without any resistance, as if the blade were simply finding the spaces that were already there. The prince asked how this was possible. How could such difficult work be made to look so effortless, so graceful, so quiet? And the cook set down his cleaver and explained, in the gentle, unhurried way of a man who has understood something important that he no longer saw with his eyes. He no longer worked with force or with cleverness. He had, over the long years of his practice, learned to follow the natural structure of things, to find the places where things want to come apart, and to move through them the way water moves through stone, not by force, but by patience, by following the grain of what is already there. He worked with the Tao, he said. And so the work was not work. It was simply the way things moved. This story has stayed alive for a very long time because it carries something true and something that the sleeping mind understands very well. There are two ways to move through the world. One is to push and strain and force your will against the grain of things, to fight the current, to insist that the world arrange itself according to your idea of how it should be. This way is exhausting. This way is the way of the busy mind that cannot rest. And there is another way, the way of the cook, the way of the river, the way of the leaf releasing from the branch in autumn. It is the way of letting, of following, of moving with the deep current of what is, rather than against it. This way is effortless. This way leads, eventually, to rest. The Taoists had a word for this effortless action. They called it Wu Wei, which is sometimes translated as non-doing, or effortless action, or the action that is no action. It sounds, at first, like a strange and paradoxical idea. How can there be action that is not action? And yet you know this feeling, even if you have never had a name for it. You know it in the moments when something you have been trying very hard to remember suddenly surfaces, softly, when you stop trying. You know it in the moments when the right words come in conversation only when you stop reaching for them. You know it in the deep and heavy loosening that is happening in your body right now, as you lie still in the dark and let your breath move in and out of you. Slowly, without any effort, the body breathing itself the way the river runs itself, the way the stars hold their positions in the sky without anything holding them. Wu Wei is the deep intelligence of the Tao moving through a person who has learned, slowly and through long and patient practice, to get out of its way. There was once a student who came to a Taoist teacher and said that he wanted to learn everything, that he wanted to become wise as quickly as possible, and the teacher looked at him kindly and said nothing for a while. Then the teacher asked him how long it would take to walk to the mountains that could be seen on the horizon. The student said he thought, perhaps 2 days. The teacher nodded slowly. And if you ran? The teacher asked. The student said perhaps 1 day. And if you ran with all your strength, as fast as you could? The student thought about it. The same, he admitted. Or perhaps longer, because he would tire and need to rest. The teacher smiled and said nothing more, and the student, sitting in the quiet, eventually understood what had been said to him. The fastest way is rarely the most urgent way. The straightest path is often the one that follows the contours of the landscape rather than cutting through them. The wisest learning comes not to the mind that forces itself, but to the mind that rests and receives. This is exactly what is happening to you now, here in the dark, in the quiet, in the slow and gentle drift of this long and peaceful night. The understanding you are receiving is not arriving through effort. It is arriving the way the warmth of the blanket arrives, gradually moving through you from the outside in, seeping into the muscles and the bones, softening everything, making everything a little heavier and a little more still. Let the breath move out of you now. Let the chest fall. Let there be a moment of stillness at the bottom of the breath before the next one comes on its own, as it always does, as it always will, without you needing to call it. There is another story, very old and very soft, about a man who was dreaming that he was a butterfly. In the dream, he was utterly and completely a butterfly. He flew without thought, without effort. He moved from flower to flower in the warm and golden air of a dream garden. He had no past. He had no future. He was only this moment, and this flower, and this warm air, and this lightness. And then he woke, and he lay still for a moment, and he wondered, gently and without any urgency, whether he was a man who had been dreaming he was a butterfly, or whether he was a butterfly now dreaming that he was a man. This small and quiet riddle was offered by a Taoist philosopher whose name, in translation, means something close to Master Zhuang, and he was, in many ways, the great poet of the Taoist world, the one who understood that the deepest truths are best approached not with argument or with doctrine, but with story, with image, with the soft and lateral movement of the dreaming mind. And this little story about the butterfly is not a puzzle to be solved. It is an invitation to hold the self a little more lightly, to let the borders between you and the world become a little softer, a little more porous, the way the edges of things soften in dim light, in twilight, in the gentle blur of the mind that is beginning to let go. Because who are you really when you are very still and the night is quiet and the body is heavy and the thoughts are moving more and more slowly, like fish moving through deep and still water? Who is the one lying in the dark? The boundary between the one who is listening and the one who is dreaming is thinner than it seems. It is as thin as the skin of a leaf held up against the light. And tonight, that boundary can grow thinner still, can soften and dissolve, and you can simply drift the way the butterfly drifts, the way the cloud drifts, belonging equally to the sky and to the wind, attached to nothing, resting in the open air of simply being. The old Taoist teachers returned again and again to the image of water. They loved water the way a certain kind of mind loves something that cannot be argued with, something that is simply, quietly, completely itself. Water, they said, is the most powerful thing in the world, and yet it never uses force. It never insists. It flows always downward, always toward the lowest place, always into the space that is already open for it. It does not fight the stone. It finds the space between the grains of the stone, and it moves there, slowly, patiently, and over very long stretches of time. It shapes the stone entirely, carving canyons and smooth riverbeds, and the soft, curved valleys that seem to have always been there, as if the landscape had simply grown that way, as if no effort had ever been involved at all. And the teachers said that the wise person is like water, not weak, not passive, not without direction, but yielding, moving always toward the lower place, the humble place, the quiet place, the place that no one else is competing for. And in that yielding, finding a strength that force could never achieve. You can feel something of this now. The body is yielding to the bed beneath it. The muscles are releasing, one by one, the work of holding themselves. The jaw, the throat, the shoulders, the chest, the belly, the hips, the long and quiet length of the legs. Everything is moving gently downward, sinking slowly into the softness, the way a stone sinks through still water, unhurried, inevitable, coming to rest at last on the smooth and silent floor below. There was a valley spoken of often in the old texts, a deep, soft, hidden valley, sheltered from the wind, where the air is warm and the light is gentle, and nothing is asked of anything. The Taoists used this image of the valley the way someone might use the image of a safe and quiet room. The valley is the low place. The valley is the receiving place. The mountains rise and declare themselves and catch the storm and the lightning and the harsh force of the weather. But the valley simply lies still and open, and everything eventually flows down into it. The rain, the rivers, the mist, the warmth, the quiet. To be like the valley is to be inexhaustibly full, because everything comes to rest in the low and the open and the still. Let the mind be a valley now. Let it be low and open and very, very still. Let the thoughts that come down into it simply settle there, without rushing anywhere, without becoming anything that needs your attention. Just thoughts, resting in the quiet, the way leaves rest on the surface of still water, floating there without effort, going nowhere, belonging to the stillness as much as to themselves. The night is very soft, the breath is very slow. The room around you is warm and quiet and completely safe, and somewhere beyond the window the world is still and the stars are out, very far away and very quiet, scattered across the dark like ancient lanterns, each one a quiet and unhurried light, neither calling out nor asking to be noticed, simply there, simply burning with their own small and steady warmth, the way certain truths simply exist in the dark without needing to announce themselves. And there is something the old teachers knew about the dark, about the night, about the empty and the unseen. They did not fear it. They turned toward it the way a tired traveler turns toward home. Because in the Taoist understanding, the dark is not the absence of the light, it is its companion. It is the other half of a whole that has always been complete. The ancient symbol most people know from that tradition, the circle divided into two soft, curving halves, one dark and one pale, each one containing a small drop of the other, is not a symbol of opposition, not a symbol of struggle or conflict, but a symbol of the endless, unhurried turning of everything that lives. The dark holds a seed of the light inside it. The light holds a seed of the dark. And they move together, slowly, the way the seasons move, the way the tide moves, the way the breath moves in and out without any effort at all, simply following the rhythm that was there before you were born and will be there long after the last thought has settled into silence. So the darkness around you now is not empty. It is full. It is full of rest, full of the soft and formless potential that the old texts called the uncarved block, the thing before it becomes a thing, the wood before it becomes a table or a door or a ship, when it is still simply itself, when it contains all the possibilities at once without being any one of them yet. And you, lying here in the dark, breathing slowly, thinking nothing in particular, you are something like that too. Not the version of you that moves through the world with purposes and names and tasks. The version that is simply here, simply breathing, simply resting in the open dark, containing everything quietly, without effort, without insistence. One of the stories passed down through the old tradition tells of a cook, a man who spent his life working with his hands, doing a simple and repetitive task, and who had, over the long and patient years, come to do it so effortlessly that it no longer seemed like work at all. He moved, they said, the way a dancer moves, or the way water moves, finding always the natural path, the line of least resistance, the place where the work wanted to go. There was no forcing, there was no hacking or struggling. The blade went where the blade needed to go, following the grain, the natural structure of things, and what might have seemed like difficult work had become, through long and quiet attention, as effortless as breathing, as easy as the slow river finding its way through the soft earth to the sea. And the teacher who told this story said that this was the Tao, not something mystical or remote, not something high and distant and hard to reach, but this, right here, the effortless movement, the action that arises without forcing, the life lived in accordance with its own grain, its own natural unfolding. The old word for this was wu wei, which is sometimes translated as non-action, but which means something softer and more alive than that. It means acting without struggling against the nature of things, moving the way water moves, doing what needs to be done in the way it most naturally wants to be done, and then, when it is done, releasing it entirely, the way the river releases the rain that fell into it, sending it forward, letting it go. You can feel something of this now, if you let yourself. The breath coming and going without you doing anything at all. The body resting without you telling it to rest. The heartbeat moving quietly inside you, steady and slow, like a drum played very softly in a room far away, doing its work, keeping its rhythm, asking nothing of you. You are not breathing. You are being breathed. You are not resting. You are being held by the rest that was always there, waiting for you to stop moving long enough to feel it. The old teachers spent a great deal of time in the natural world, not traveling it or conquering it or making use of it, but simply being in it, the way a stone is in a stream, the way moss is on a rock, belonging to the place without possessing it, being shaped by the place without resistance. They watched the pine tree in the wind and the way it bent and swayed, and then, when the wind passed, returned so naturally to its upright stillness, as if the bending had never happened, as if the tree remembered its own center without effort, without thought. They watched the heron at the edge of the water, standing so still that it seemed to have become part of the bank, part of the reed bed, part of the grey and quiet morning, and then, without warning, without visible effort, moving with perfect and unhurried precision, and then returning to stillness again as if nothing had ever disturbed the surface of its waiting. They said the heron was practicing Wu Wei without knowing it, without caring what it was called, simply being what it was, in the place it was, doing what the moment asked of it, and no more. There is a particular quality of attention that the Taoist tradition valued very deeply, and it is the opposite of the kind of attention that grips or strains or tries too hard. It is a soft attention, an open attention, the attention of someone sitting at the edge of a quiet lake in the early morning, not looking for anything in particular, not trying to see, but simply present, simply open, so that whatever moves across the surface of the water arrives in the awareness naturally, without being sought, the way light arrives on still water, the way sound arrives in a quiet room, not grabbed, not pursued, simply received. And this is the quality of mind that begins to settle in you now. Not the sharp, seeking, grasping mind of the day, not the mind that makes lists and solves problems and tries to hold everything in order, but the open, soft, receiving mind of the night, the mind that lets things arrive and does not chase them away and does not hold them tight, but lets them pass through, the way the wind passes through the leaves, touching everything and holding nothing. The old texts spoke of something they called the unnameable, the thing that was before all things, the source that is not itself a thing, the root from which the 10,000 things arise and to which they all, in time, return. And they said, very gently, that this thing cannot be spoken about directly, that any word you put on it immediately becomes something less than it, a sign pointing at the moon and not the moon itself. And so the wisest approach, they said, is a kind of quiet, a kind of not knowing, a willingness to sit with the mystery without demanding that it explain itself. without needing it to become smaller so that the mind can wrap around it. And there is something very restful in this, something very releasing. Because if the deepest truth is not something you can think your way to, not something you can work hard enough to understand, not something that rewards the straining and the seeking, then the most intelligent thing you can do is simply stop, simply be still, simply let the mind grow quiet and open and wait, the way the valley waits, the way the deep water waits, receiving without grasping, being without insisting, resting in the not knowing the way you might rest in a warm and dimly lit room, with no particular reason to move. There is a story told of a student who came to a teacher full of questions, full of ideas, full of things he already believed, and the teacher offered him tea and poured the cup full and then kept pouring, and the student watched the tea overflow the cup and spill across the table and said, "It is too full, nothing more can go in." And the teacher said, simply, "Yes." And the student understood, in a slow and sideways way that was more like remembering than learning, that the mind that is already full of what it thinks it knows has no room for anything new, no room for the soft and the unexpected, no room for the understanding that arrives not as an idea but as a feeling, like warmth, like the slow release of a long-held breath. So the mind that is softening now, the mind that is growing quieter and less certain of its own edges, is not losing something. It is making room. It is becoming the empty bowl, the hollow of the hand, the space inside the cup that is the only reason the cup is useful at all. The old teachers loved the empty space. They wrote about doors and windows and said that it is the opening, the hole, the absence that makes the thing what it is. The wheel turns around its empty hub. The pot holds because of its hollow center. The room shelters because of the empty air inside it. And the mind rests, truly rests, when it becomes a little empty, when it releases the crowding of the day and grows spacious and soft and wide and still. The breathing is very slow now. Each breath, a long and quiet thing, arriving without hurry, leaving without urgency, and between each breath a small and gentle pause, a soft space where nothing is needed, nothing is asked, where the whole of everything simply holds still for a moment. The way the world holds still in the last quiet second before the dawn, when even the birds have not yet begun, when the dark is at its most complete and most gentle, when the night is a great and soft and held breath. The trees outside, if there are trees, are very still. Or perhaps they are moving, very slowly, in a breath of air so gentle it is almost nothing. Just the faintest suggestion of movement, the leaves turning slightly in the dark, catching no light, making no sound, simply shifting the way things shift when the world is at its most at ease. And somewhere in the depths of the old tradition, in the quiet of all that has been written and spoken and passed from one still mind to another across the long and unhurried river of time, there is this simple understanding that you belong here, that the place you are in right now, the warmth, the dark, the slow breath, the heavy and softening body, the mind growing loose and wide and empty, this is not a stopping place on the way to somewhere else. This is the arriving. This is the place the water was always flowing toward, the valley that receives everything, the low and open and still place where nothing is in conflict and nothing needs to be done, and the long work of the day can dissolve, quietly and completely, like mist dissolving in the warmth of the morning, like a thought dissolving in the soft dark of the night. The stories of Lao Tzu and the old wandering poets and the still teachers are not stories about other people in other times. They are reflections, held up softly, of something that is already here, already present in the space between your thoughts, in the quiet underneath the quiet, in the place that has always been still, even when everything else was moving. The Tao is not something to be found. The teachers said this very clearly, and it is perhaps the most restful thing they ever said. You do not need to seek it. You do not need to earn it or understand it or arrive at it after a long and difficult journey. It is what remains when the seeking stops. It is what is always already here, the way the silence is always already here, under every sound, the way the dark is always already here, beneath every light, patient and complete, and asking nothing of you, holding you the way. Deep water holds a stone that has finally come to rest, gently, without effort, in the quiet and the cool and the still. The mind is moving more and more slowly now. The thoughts, when they come, are soft and without edges, more like shapes seen through water than like thoughts at all, rising and shifting and dissolving before they become anything in particular, before they ask anything of you, before they need you to follow them anywhere. You do not need to follow them. You can simply watch them drift, the way you might watch clouds drift across a very dark and quiet sky, each one passing slowly through the field of your soft attention, and then moving on, taking nothing with it, leaving the sky as it was, open and dark and still. A teacher once said that the way to hold the mind during meditation is the same way you hold a small bird in the hand, not so tight that you crush it, not so loose that it flies away. Just a warm and easy and unhurried holding, more like a resting than a gripping. And tonight there is not even that much to do. Tonight the hand can simply open. Tonight the holding can simply stop. Let the bird go wherever birds go in the dark. Let the thought go wherever thoughts go when no one is watching them. Let the whole effort of maintaining and managing and keeping things in order release slowly, the way the muscles of the hand release when sleep comes, the fingers uncurling one by one, the palm falling open, soft and warm, the whole weight of the evening settling into it like warmth, settling into a stone that has been in the sun all day, slow and complete and entirely without effort. There is an old image from the tradition, one of the quietest and most gentle of a valley. Not a dramatic valley, not a deep and shadowed gorge with rushing water and steep walls, but a wide and open and unhurried valley, soft with distance, the kind of valley that seems to hold the light even after the light has gone, that keeps a warmth in the air long after the sun has passed over the far edge of the hills. The old teachers were fond of this image. They return to it again and again the way you return to a warm room on a cold evening, not because you have decided to, but because the warmth draws you without asking. The valley, they said, is never empty in the hungry way. It is full in the quiet way. Everything comes to it eventually. The rain comes to it. The rivers come to it. The mist settles into it. The snow covers it softly. And the valley receives all of it without reaching, without striving, without making any effort at all, simply by being low, by being open, by being the kind of place where things naturally arrive and rest. And perhaps that is what the body is, tonight. Perhaps that is what this moment of lying still in the warm dark truly is. Not a pause between things, not a gap in the day, but a receiving. A slow and open receiving of everything the hours have brought, the tiredness, the thoughts that have grown thin with use, the small tensions that accumulated in the shoulders and the jaw and the space behind the eyes, all of it arriving now into the valley of this stillness, and being received without judgment, without examination, simply held in the wide and quiet air until it softens and dissolves and becomes nothing in particular, the way snow becomes water and water becomes the quiet moisture in the ground, gone into something larger, something still. The breath, if you notice it, is its own slow valley. The lungs fill without effort, the way the valley fills with morning mist, and then the air goes out again, unhurried, the way the mist thins when the morning grows a little warmer, and what remains is the soft and open space between one breath and the next, a small pause that is its own kind of rest, its own small country of stillness where the whole body simply waits, neither full nor empty, neither arriving nor departing, simply being for that one unhurried moment, the way the valley simply is, wide and soft, and belonging entirely to itself. The old wanderers, the ones who walked the mountains and the river valleys with very little and seemed to need nothing more, spoke often about water. Water was their great teacher, their most patient example, their softest argument. Water, they said, is the most yielding thing in the world, and yet it shapes the hardest stone, not by force, not by pressure, not by any kind of effort you could name. but simply by continuing, by flowing, by being exactly and only itself in every moment, asking nothing, resisting nothing, finding always the lowest and most natural path, and following it without hesitation, without doubt, without any of the deliberating and weighing and second-guessing that tires the human mind so deeply. And water rests too. That is the part that is perhaps the most comforting, the part that arrives most softly in the quiet of the night. Even the river, which seems always to be moving, contains within itself a great stillness. Deep beneath the surface, where the current is slow and the light does not reach, the water is nearly still, a dark and quiet holding, a depth where nothing moves quickly and nothing needs to. The fish in that deep water, if there are fish, are themselves unhurried. They drift more than they swim. They hold their place in the slow current with the smallest possible adjustment, barely a movement at all, just the faintest shift of a fin, the gentlest correction, and then stillness again. The body resting in the water the way the water rests in the valley, completely, without remainder. Let the jaw soften now, if it has tightened at all. Let the whole face grow a little heavier, a little more at rest, the way the surface of deep water grows smooth when the wind has gone and nothing disturbs it from above, a perfect and quiet evenness, reflecting nothing in the dark, simply resting in its own nature. There is a quality the old teachers called Wu Wei, and it is one of the softest ideas anyone has ever offered to the world. It does not translate neatly into any other language, which is perhaps a sign that it belongs to something deeper than language, something the body understands before the mind does. It means, roughly and incompletely, acting without forcing, moving without pushing, doing what is needed without the grinding effort of the will, without the clenched jaw determination that leaves a person more tired at the end of a task than at the beginning. It is the way the flower opens, not by trying, not by making a decision and following through, but simply by being at a certain point in its own unfolding, so that the opening is not something the flower does, but something the flower is. It is the way the eye closes in sleep, not because you have decided to sleep, not because you have achieved the right conditions through sufficient effort, but because the body has arrived at its own quiet moment, and the closing is simply what happens, gently and entirely naturally, the lids growing heavier and heavier in the dark until the heaviness is the whole world and everything else is very far away. Tonight is a Wu Wei night. Tonight, the only thing that is being asked is that nothing be asked of yourself. The doing that is needed tonight is the softest possible undoing, the slow release of everything that has been held, the unhurried opening of the hand, the fingers curling back one by one into softness, the whole architecture of the waking day dissolving very slowly, like sugar dissolving in warm water, so slowly and so completely that it becomes impossible to say at exactly what moment the dissolving was done, only that the water is now sweet and still, and the evening is now deep and warm, and the body is heavy in the most comfortable way, the way a stone is heavy, the way the earth is heavy, not burdened but simply and fully itself, resting in the place it has come to. The teachers spoke also about simplicity, not the simplicity that is merely the absence of complexity, not the simplicity of things reduced and diminished and stripped of their fullness, but a deeper simplicity, the kind that is on the other side of everything, that has passed through all the layers of thought and complication and deliberation and emerged into something clean and wide and unhurried. The simplicity of a long exhalation, the simplicity of a room in which all the work is done and the lamps have been turned down and there is nothing left to attend to, only the warm and quiet air and the sound of your own slow breathing. That simplicity is here now. It has been here all along, waiting with great patience, the way simple things always wait, without urgency, without complaint, and kada, 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 content to remain where they are until the complicated things have tired themselves out and grown still. It is the simplicity of this warm and dark and held moment, of the body growing heavier and softer against the bed, of the mind growing slower and wider and less interested in its own contents, of the long day receding like a shore seen from a boat drifting quietly out to sea, growing smaller and softer and more distant until the details cannot be made out anymore, only the soft general shape of it, and then even that shape growing hazy and then gone, and only the open water remaining, dark and quiet, and going on in every direction, without edge or interruption. The blanket is very heavy. Or perhaps it is not the blanket that is heavy, but the body itself, finally releasing all the held lightness of the day, finally letting go of the effortful uprightness that walking and sitting and moving through the world requires, finally sinking without resistance into the soft and patient surface beneath it. There is something deeply reassuring about that sinking, something the bones understand before the mind does. A rightness, a recognition, as though the body has been waiting all day for exactly this, for this particular quality of horizontal stillness, this particular angle of rest, this precise and welcome weight of nothing more to do. In the old stories, the wisest figures are often the ones who do the least. They sit at the edge of things, by a river or on a hillside or in a doorway at the end of the day, and they watch with a quality of attention that is not quite watching, because watching implies effort, and this is something softer, something more like a flower facing the light, a simple and natural turning toward what is present, without any attempt to hold it, or understand it, or keep it from changing. They do not explain their wisdom, these quiet figures. Or when they do explain, the explanation is so simple that it passes through the mind like warm air through an open window, leaving nothing behind except a faint sense of having been gently touched by something very old and very kind. And you have been touched by something very old and very kind tonight. In the listening, in the slow and unhurried receiving of these soft old ideas, in the way the body has been settling all this time, in the way the breath has been growing slower and easier and more its own quiet thing. In all of this, there has been a kind of transmission, the same kind that the old teachers spoke about, not from mind to mind in the way of information, not through argument or demonstration or clever analogy, but from stillness to stillness, from the deep quiet of the tradition to the deep quiet that is right now opening in you, the way a quiet room opens when the last noise has passed and the silence returns to its own fullness. There is no effort required in any of this. That is the heart of it, the softest and most restful center of everything the wanderers and the valley dwellers and the water watchers were trying to say. Not that effort is bad, not that the day's work was without value, but that here, in this place, in this hour, effort has served its purpose and can now be gently set aside, the way you set aside a tool you have been holding all day, placing it carefully on the bench, feeling the hand open and relax and return to itself, feeling the slight ache of having held something for a long time dissolve slowly into the air. The thinking is growing very soft now. The thoughts, when they arise, are not really thoughts in the ordinary sense. They are more like impressions, faint and gentle, the way pressed flowers leave an impression in old paper, barely there, more a warmth than a shape, more a suggestion than a meaning. They do not require anything, they do not lead anywhere. They arrive softly, and they pass away softly, and between them the quiet grows just a little larger each time, a little wider, a little more complete, the way a river grows wider as it nears the sea, the current slowing as the banks fall away, the water spreading out into something that is not quite river and not quite sea, but a slow and gentle and enormous becoming, patient and unhurried and entirely at ease. The old tradition held that the Tao, the deep flowing nature of all things, was older than the oldest name for it. It was there before the first word, before the first thought, before the first breath of the first morning, and it will be there after, long after, in the cool and unhurried dark between stars, in the slow turning of things too large and too patient to be hurried by anything. And within that great and ancient and ongoing stillness, this small moment of warmth and rest and slow breathing is not a small thing at all. It is not a lesser version of some other more important moment. It is the whole thing, contained entirely within itself, perfect in its softness, complete in its quietness, the Tao resting in the Tao, the stillness resting inside the stillness, the way a seed rests inside its shell in the long and patient dark of winter, not waiting to become something else, not enduring the present in order to arrive at a better future, but simply and fully being what it is in the warmth and the quiet and the close dark, everything it needs already here, everything already complete. The whole of the world contracted to this one small and perfect and unhurried point of rest, this breath, this warmth, this soft and heavy and entirely welcome weight of nothing more to do. In the old stories, the wisest figures are often the ones who do the least. They sit at the edge of things, by a river or on a hillside or in a doorway at the end of the day, and they watch with a quality of attention that is not quite watching, because watching implies effort, and this is something softer, something more like a flower facing the light, a simple and natural turning toward what is present without any attempt to hold it or understand it or keep it from changing. They do not explain their wisdom, these quiet figures. Or when they do explain, the explanation is so simple that it passes through the mind like warm air through an open window, leaving nothing behind except a faint sense of having been gently touched by something very old and very kind. And you have been touched by something very old and very kind tonight. In the listening, in the slow and unhurried receiving of these soft old ideas, in the way the body has been settling all this time, in the way the breath has been growing slower and easier and more its own quiet thing, in all of this there has been a kind of transmission, the same kind that the old teachers spoke about, not from mind to mind in the way of information, not through argument or demonstration or clever analogy, but from stillness to stillness, from the deep quiet of the tradition to the deep quiet that is right now opening in you, the way a quiet room opens when the last noise has passed and the silence returns to its own fullness. There is no effort required in any of this. That is the heart of it, the softest and most restful center of everything the wanderers and the valley dwellers and the water watchers were trying to say. Not that effort is bad, not that the day's work was without value, but that here, in this place, in this hour, effort has served its purpose and can now be gently set aside, the way you set aside a tool you have been holding all day, placing it carefully on the bench, feeling the hand open and relax and return to itself, feeling the slight ache of having held something for a long time dissolve slowly into the air. The thinking is growing very soft now. The thoughts, when they arise, are not really thoughts in the ordinary sense. They are more like impressions, faint and gentle, the way pressed flowers leave an impression in old paper, barely there, more a warmth than a shape, more a suggestion than a meaning. They do not require anything. They do not lead anywhere. They arrive softly and they pass away softly, and between them the quiet grows just a little larger each time, a little wider, a little more complete, the way a river grows wider as it nears the sea, the current slowing as the banks fall away, the water spreading out into something that is not quite river and not quite sea, but a slow and gentle and enormous becoming, patient and unhurried, and entirely at ease. The old tradition held that the Tao, the deep flowing nature of all things, was older than the oldest name for it. It was there before the first word, before the first thought, before the first breath of the first morning. And it will be there after, long after, in the cool and unhurried dark between stars, in the slow turning of things too large and too patient to be hurried by anything. And within that great and ancient and ongoing stillness, this small moment of warmth and rest and slow breathing is not a small thing at all. It is not a lesser version of some other more important moment. It is the whole thing, contained entirely within itself, perfect in its softness, complete in its quietness, the Tao resting in the Tao, the stillness resting inside the stillness, the way a seed rests inside its shell in the long and patient dark of winter, not waiting to become something else, not enduring the present in order to arrive at a better future, but simply and fully being what it is, in the warmth and the quiet and the close dark, everything it needs already here, everything already complete, The whole of the world contracted to this one small and perfect and unhurried point of rest. This breath, this warmth, this soft and heavy and entirely welcome, entirely welcome. The way the dark is welcome, the way the weight of the blanket is welcome, the way the quiet is welcome, not as an absence of something better, but as a presence in its own right, full and round and sufficient. The way a bowl is most useful precisely because of the empty space within it. The way a room becomes a room because of the air it holds, rather than the walls that hold it. Emptiness as gift, stillness as abundance, rest as a kind of completeness that the busy hours can only gesture toward but never quite reach. There was a teacher once, in a story softer than most stories, who sat for a long time beside a small fire at the edge of a forest, and a student came and sat beside him, and for a long while, neither of them spoke. The fire settled and breathed. The dark of the forest stood quiet and close, and eventually the student said, very quietly, "I have been carrying something heavy for a very long time, and I do not know how to put it down." And the teacher did not answer right away. He watched the fire for a while, the way one watches something with great patience and no desire to change it, and then he said, simply, "You are already putting it down. You are doing it right now." The student looked at his hands, which were open and resting in his lap, and felt, without quite understanding why, that something in the quality of the night had shifted, as though the air itself had grown a little warmer, a little more accommodating, a little more like the inside of something sheltering, rather than the outside of something vast. And the fire settled again, and the dark leaned in, softly, and neither of them spoke for a long time after that. That is perhaps the whole of it, in its simplest form, that we are always, already, in the act of putting down, that the body knows this, even when the mind does not. That the hands, open on the blanket now, are performing a very ancient and very wise gesture, the gesture of release, the gesture of trust, the gesture of a thing that has done what it was asked to do and is now, quietly and without ceremony, returning itself to the larger quiet from which it came each morning. The old wanderer who wrote the words that have been flowing gently through this night was himself, by some accounts, a kind of disappearing act. He had served in a library, keeping records, tending to the accumulated memory of a civilization, and then one day, when he was very old and very quiet, he simply walked away toward the west, toward the mountains and the fading light, and a gatekeeper at the edge of the known world recognized something in his bearing, something unhurried and complete, and asked him to write down what he knew before he passed beyond. And so he sat, somewhere near the edge of things, and wrote 81 short passages, each one a kind of window onto something that cannot quite be seen directly, the way you see a very faint star more clearly when you look slightly to the side of it rather than straight at it. And then he continued walking, and the mountains received him, and the story does not say what came after, because what came after was simply the continuing of what had always been, the quiet road, the patient sky, the world going on in its own unhurried way. There is something beautiful about a life that ends in walking, in simply continuing in the same direction until the direction becomes everything, in moving so slowly and so naturally through the world that the difference between walking and resting and sleeping and the deep quiet beneath sleeping becomes, at a certain point, a difference of degree rather than kind. All of it part of the same long flowing. All of it part of the same river finding its way, without effort and without urgency, to the same enormous and welcoming sea. Let the shoulders soften a little more, if they are willing. Let whatever remains of the day's weight settle deeper into the warmth beneath you. There is nowhere to be. There is nothing to hold. The night is doing what the night has always done, quietly and without interruption. The dark turning slowly in its patient way. The stars in their immense and unhurried courses. The breath of the world slow and even and entirely without concern for anything that feels. In the small hours, like difficulty, the Tao that the old wanderer wrote about was not a teaching in the way that most teachings are. It was more like a reminder, a gentle tapping on the shoulder of someone who has been looking very hard in the wrong direction. Not a correction, exactly, and not a rebuke, but a soft invitation to turn, very slowly, and look at what has been here all along, so close and so quiet and so utterly without demand that it has been easy, so easy, to walk past it every day without noticing. The way you might walk past the same tree for years and then one morning, in a particular quality of early light, see it entirely, the particular way it holds its branches, the particular patience of its stillness, the way its roots go down and down into the cool dark of the earth without any noise, without any effort, without any need to be acknowledged for the depth of what they do. Roots in the dark. That is perhaps what rest is. What this particular kind of rest is, this slow sinking into the hours of the night, this gradual releasing of the surface world, this descent into something older and quieter and more sustaining than thought. The roots of the self going down, silently, into whatever it is that feeds and restores and makes the morning possible. Not growing toward the light in these hours, not reaching or striving or extending, but moving in the other direction entirely, downward and inward and deep, into the quiet places where nothing is asked and nothing is measured, and the only work is the soft work of simply being nourished. The valley was a word the old wanderer used often. The valley spirit. The valley nature. The valley does not fill up, he said, or something very like that. The valley receives everything and holds nothing against anything, and is never used up by all the water and the weather and the light that flows through it. And there is something of the valley in sleep, in genuine rest, in this quality of lying open and low and receiving, letting the darkness flow through like water through a valley, letting the silence settle like morning mist into the lowest and most sheltered places, filling everything gently, softening every edge, blurring every line, until the distinction between the self and the rest, and the room and the dark, becomes something approximate and unimportant and very, very soft. The breath moves on its own now. That is worth noticing, not in a way that brings sharp attention to it, but in the softest, most peripheral way, the way you might notice warmth on a drowsy afternoon, a simple and wordless acknowledgement that something good and easy and completely reliable is happening without any help from you. The breath has always known what to do. Long before the mind learned any of its lessons, the breath was already practicing this same slow and patient rhythm, in and out, a movement so natural and so old that it belongs to a different order of things than thought or intention or plan. It belongs to the order of rivers and tides and the slow breathing of forests in the wind. There is a particular kind of trust that the body develops over a very long time, a trust so deep that it no longer feels like trust. It simply feels like the texture of being alive. The trust that the breath will continue. The trust that the heart will keep its own slow time. The trust that the body knows things the mind has barely begun to learn, knows them in the way water knows the shape of the vessel it rests in, knows them without knowing, knows them the way the root knows the dark. In some of the oldest stories of this tradition, the sage is described as someone who cannot easily be distinguished from an ordinary person who buys vegetables in the market, who walks home in the afternoon, who sits by the window in the evening and watches the light change, who falls asleep without ceremony. The wisdom is not separate from the ordinary life. It is the ordinary life, seen from the inside, experienced with a particular quality of openness and ease. The sage eats because eating is nourishing and good. The sage sleeps because sleep is nourishing and good. The sage does not perform any of these things. The sage simply does them with the whole of a quiet self, and finds in the doing of them the same deep flowing that others search for in distant places and elaborate practices. You are doing that now. You are doing that right now, without any practice required, without any special quality of understanding. You are simply lying in the dark and breathing and letting the night be the night around you. And in this simplicity, In this utterly ordinary and utterly sufficient act, the whole of the old teaching is present, not as an idea, not as a lesson, but as the actual texture and weight and warmth of this particular moment, this breath, this soft pressure of the bed beneath you, this quality of the dark, this gradual and entirely natural loosening of the self from the day that made it busy. The loosening has been happening all along. It does not require your attention. It does not need to be encouraged or monitored or approved. The way ice softens in warmth without any effort on the part of the ice, the way a knot loosens over time simply by losing its urgency, the way a muscle held tight for hours discovers, in the right kind of stillness, that it has forgotten why it was holding, and releases, slowly and with a kind of sigh that is felt rather than heard. Let that be true of everything that is still holding. Whatever small tensions remain in the jaw or the hands or the place behind the eyes where the day collects, not a command, not an instruction, just a soft and patient reminder that the warmth is here and the dark is kind and the night is long and entirely on your side, and that there is nothing, not one single thing, that requires your grip right now. The water in the old stories never grips. It moves around. It finds the low places. It takes the shape of whatever holds it, without argument, without effort, without any sense of having compromised itself. And then it moves on, when the time comes, without looking back, without regret, without any attachment to the particular shape it wore for a while. This is what the old wanderer called the highest good, this quality of water, this yielding and finding and flowing and releasing. Not passivity, not indifference, something richer and more alive than either, a responsiveness so complete that it looks, from the outside, like stillness. And that is what is happening in you now, in the deepest places, below thought, below intention, below the level at which things have names. A responsiveness so complete, it looks like stillness. A river so wide and so slow it looks, in the dark, like a field. The old tradition spoke of returning, coming back, one for, not to a place but to a quality, a texture, something that was present before the complications began and that remains present underneath them, patient and unchanged, the way the sky remains unchanged by the weather that moves across it. You carry this within you always, the unchanged sky of yourself, vast and dark and bright at the same time, unbothered by the clouds, unhurried by the wind, never diminished by what passes through it. And in sleep, in this soft and gradual undoing of the waking self, something in you moves closer to that sky. Something rises gently through the layers of the day and opens, slowly, into something wider and quieter and older, something that was always there. That rising is a falling, that opening is a closing. These are not contradictions in the country where you are traveling now. In the country where you are traveling, the opposites have grown so close to one another in the warmth that they have blurred at the edges. Waking and sleeping, knowing and not knowing, holding and releasing, full and empty, the valley and the mountain, all of them breathing into one another in the dark, all of them part of the same slow turning, the same enormous and unhurried turning. The same enormous and unhurried turning that holds the seasons in it, that carries the day into the evening and the evening into the night, without any seam between them that you could find if you tried, without any moment at which you could say, here is where the light ended and the dark began, because the boundary was always softer than that, always more like a breath than a wall, always more like a sigh than a closing door. And so you have already crossed it, perhaps, without knowing, without the sensation of crossing. The way sleep comes not as an arrival but as a realization, always slightly after the fact, always already there before you noticed. The way you might become aware of warmth, not when it first touches you but some moments later, when your body has already accepted it and settled into it and forgotten what the cold felt like. This is the kindness of these transitions. They do not announce themselves. They do not require your participation. They simply become, and you find yourself inside them, already at home. The old tradition had many ways of speaking about this quality of already. the sage does not become wise. The sage recognizes the wisdom that was always present. The water does not decide to flow downward. Flowing downward is simply what water does when nothing stops it. The seed does not choose to become the tree. It becomes the tree because that is what is already inside it, waiting with enormous patience for the right conditions of warmth and moisture and time. There is no effort in any of this. There is only the unfolding of what was always there, the slow revelation of what was already the case, the way a room that has been in darkness reveals itself, feature by feature, as your eyes adjust, not because the room has changed, but because you have grown quieter and softer inside, because the inner noise has dimmed enough to let you see what was there all along. Let your inner noise dim now, not as an instruction, not as a thing you must accomplish, but simply as a description of what is already happening, what has been happening since the moment you lay down and let the day begin. It's slow and natural dissolving. The noise dims because noise, like everything that rises, must also fall. Because the mind, like any living thing that has been active, carries within itself the need for rest, and that need is patient and reliable, and will always, in the end, be met. You do not have to chase it or earn it or arrange it correctly. It comes because you are made for it, because the whole of your body is organized around the rhythm of this falling, because the night knows your name in a language older than words and calls you by it now, gently, the way a slow river calls to water held in a high place, not loudly, not urgently, but with the simple gravity of a thing that is certain of its own direction. Somewhere in the teaching there is a river that flows from a high mountain down to the sea, and the old wanderer watched it in his mind for a long time and found in it something that words could only gesture toward. The river does not know it is flowing. It does not plan its course. It does not correct itself with effort when it encounters an obstacle. It simply finds the way that is available and takes it and continues, and the mountain behind it and the sea before it are both equally accepted, equally met with the same open and unhurried quality of movement. The mountain was where it began. The sea is where it will arrive. But the river is not in a hurry to leave the mountain behind or to reach the sea. The river is entirely in the place where it is, entirely present in the current valley, the current bend, the current pattern of light on water at this particular hour of this particular day. And then, having been entirely present there, it moves, because moving is what rivers do, and the moving is as easy and as natural as the staying. You are the river now. In this moment, in this dark and quiet room, you are entirely in the place where you are, not arriving anywhere, not leaving anything. Simply here, in the current bend, the current warmth, the current weight of the blanket and the softness of the pillow, and the slow and entirely reliable rhythm of the breath that moves in and out without your asking. This is enough. This is, in the language of the old tradition, the whole of it. Not a station on the way to somewhere else, the place itself, the arrival that looks like rest. And from here, from this place of easy presence, the mind begins to do something that the day never quite allows. It begins to loosen its hold on the particular. It begins to let the sharp outlines of things soften into something more general and more restful, the way a landscape seen from a great height loses the detail of individual leaves and stones and becomes something larger and simpler and more beautiful in its simplicity, a broad sweep of color and form that asks nothing of the eye, that the eye can rest upon without effort, taking it all in at once without needing to examine any part of it. The mind begins to see from that height now. The events of the day, which were so vivid and so particular and so demanding of attention while they were happening, grow small and soft in the distance, not unimportant, not forgotten, simply far away enough that they no longer require your hands, simply far away enough that you can let them rest where they are, in the soft distance behind you, while you float on ahead, slowly, on the long and unhurried current of the night. There was a teaching in the old tradition about smallness, not smallness as diminishment, smallness as the quality of the valley, which is lower than everything around it, and therefore receives everything that flows. Smallness as the quality of water, which takes no more space than it is given, and therefore fits everywhere. Smallness as a kind of willingness, a readiness to be held rather than to hold, to be carried rather than to carry, to receive the night rather than to manage it. And in this smallness, in this soft and willing diminishment of the effortful self, something immense becomes available. The valley, because it is low and empty and unhurried, is also the place where everything gathers, where the rain collects, where the animals come to drink, where the mist lingers longest in the morning. The very quality that seems like an absence is the quality that makes abundance possible. The emptiness of the valley is not a lack. It is a fullness of a different kind, a fullness that is always ready, always available, always capable of receiving one more thing. You are the valley now. The night is moving through you, collecting in you, filling the low and quiet places of you with something cool and still and deep. Let it fill you. Let the thoughts that were held up high, somewhere in the effortful mind, find the downward slope and follow it, gently, without resistance, into the quiet basin of the body, where they will dissolve into the general warmth, into the slow darkness, into the deep and unhurried rest that is already gathering in the heavy places of your limbs, in the loose and softening muscles of the hands, in the smooth and restful territory behind the eyes. The eyes that see in sleep see differently. They see without looking. They receive images that have already passed through the filter of waking concern and come out the other side as something softer, something rounder and more fluid, something more like feeling than like sight. The colors in those images have no sharp edges. The figures in those images move slowly, or they stand very still in warm light, or they drift the way reflections drift on the surface of a slow-moving river, breaking apart and coming back together, always recognizable and always changed, always themselves and always something else, the way all things are in the country that lies just a little further in, just a little deeper down, just a little further along this particular current that is carrying you now so gently that you can barely feel the movement. In the oldest layers of the tradition, before the words and the teaching and the careful arrangement of ideas into things that could be passed from one person to another, there was simply this, a quality of the night, a quality of the dark that was experienced not as an absence of light, but as a presence of something older and softer and more continuous than light. The dark as a kind of ground, the dark as the thing that everything rests upon, the way the earth rests beneath the visible world, patient and vast, and entirely indifferent to the comings and goings of the surface. The wanderer who walked out of the gates of the old city and into the mountains was walking toward this dark, toward this ground, toward the quality of stillness that lies beneath everything that moves. And he found there not emptiness, as one might fear, but fullness of a kind that the busy world could not contain. A richness without noise, a warmth without source, a belonging that required nothing of him, that asked no questions and made no demands, that simply held him in its enormous and indifferent and utterly intimate embrace. The embrace is here. It is always here. You have felt it before, in the moments just before sleep, in the moments when the day has finally finished asking things of you and you have finally set it down and let the dark gather around you. That gathering is happening now. You can feel it, perhaps, in the weight of the body, in the way the bed seems to receive you a little more fully with each breath, in the way the edges of things have softened in the darkness until there are no longer really edges, until the boundary between the body and the warmth that surrounds it has become something more like a suggestion than a fact, something more like the horizon of a calm and featureless sea than like a wall or a limit. The sea in the old tradition was sometimes a metaphor for the source, for the vast and undifferentiated ground from which all particular things arise and to which they return. The river finds the sea eventually, not as a destination it has been striving toward, but as the natural conclusion of its own most essential tendency, as the place where the flowing can finally become what it always was, vast and still at once, moving everywhere and moving nowhere, full of everything and holding nothing, the great and patient receiver of all the small and particular streams that have been winding their way through the mountains and the valleys, and the ordinary landscapes of ordinary lives, finding their way home not by searching but by following the most natural path, the lowest path, the easiest and most unhurried path, the one that gravity laid out before them in the beginning and that they have been following ever since without needing to know it. Following the easiest path is what you are doing now. The path from waking into sleep is the easiest path of all. It requires less of you than anything else. It requires only that you stop requiring things of yourself, only that you set down the work of holding the day together and let the night do what the night does, which is to gently take the day apart, not destructively, not carelessly, but with the slow and expert tenderness of a great weariness that knows exactly how to dissolve what needs dissolving and leave whole what should remain, the way a slow and warm tide removes what the shore does not need and leaves behind what is clean and smooth and true. What is clean and smooth and true in you is not going anywhere. It does not need your protection. It does not need your supervision. It has been there through every night you have ever slept and has always been there in the morning, unchanged, unhurried, requiring nothing from you except this occasional willingness to let go of everything that was added in the day and return to the simpler and more restful truth of what you actually are, underneath the additions, underneath the adjustments and the efforts and the careful maintenance of the waking self. Underneath all of that, something entirely at ease, something that has never been hurried, something that breathes as slowly as a sleeping mountain breathes, in its own enormous time, on its own unhurried rhythm, deep and full and patient, and entirely sufficient. The mountain breathes very slowly, so slowly that a single breath takes longer than a season, so slowly that the in-breath and the out-breath are separated by long stretches of what looks, from a human perspective, like stillness, like rest, like something that is not quite breathing at all but is also, somehow, unmistakably alive. This is the breathing you are moving toward, not the sharp and rapid breath of the waking day, with its urgencies and its adjustments and its moment-to-moment responses to the world, but the slow breath of the mountain, the breath that is almost not a breath. The breath that is so close to stillness that the two have become the same thing, that the movement and the pause have grown so similar in quality that they require no distinction, that the body simply continues, quietly, in its own enormous time, without effort, without attention, without any quality of doing at all, pure and easy being. Let the breath become that now, not by controlling it, not by slowing it on purpose, but simply by releasing the small and habitual effort that keeps it where it is, by letting it find its own most natural depth and pace, the pace it moves toward when nothing is asked of it, when the night is kind and the body is warm and the mind has grown soft enough to stop managing what was never really in need of management. The breath knows what it is doing. It has always known. It knew before you did. It will continue knowing after the part of you that manages things has finally set down its work and joined the rest of you in this deep and rolling dark. The dark rolls, slowly, like a very large and very calm sea, barely moving, almost still, just the faintest suggestion of a swell beneath the surface, a long and gentle undulation that lifts and lowers everything on it without effort, without drama, without any disruption of the general stillness. You are on that sea now, lifted and lowered, very gently, very slowly, the motion so slight and so steady that it is less like movement and more like breathing, less like a journey and more like a rest, less like going somewhere and more like the most comfortable quality of simply being here, on the dark water, in the warm night, under the enormous and unhurried sky. The sky above you now is so full of quiet that the stars, if there are stars, are not bright points of light, but soft and distant glimmerings, the way a candle looks through closed eyelids, warm and diffuse and not quite focused, more like a memory of light than like light itself, more like the idea of something shining than like something actually shining. And this is exactly right, because the mind that is beginning to sleep begins to soften the edges of everything, begins to let the sharp become the gentle, the clear become the hazy, the known become the half-known, and then the barely known, and then the simply felt, warm and present and requiring no name. You are not required to name anything now. There is nothing here that needs your attention in that way, nothing that is asking to be identified or understood or filed away for later. The sky above you on this slow and dark water does not need your understanding. The warmth of the water beneath you does not need your gratitude, though it is there, steady and generous, holding you with the same unhurried patience with which it holds everything that floats upon it. The night does not need you to witness it. It is complete without your witnessing. It was complete before you arrived, and it will be complete long after you have slipped below the surface of waking and into the deeper country of sleep. And all of this completeness, all of this easy self-sufficiency of the world, is one of the most restful things there is. To be held by something that does not need you to hold it back. To be part of something that does not require your participation in order to continue. To float on a water that would be water, whether or not anyone was floating on it. This is the teaching that drifts up from the deep, slow tradition of the Tao, the one that asks nothing strenuous of us, the one that says simply that the world is already happening, and that your deepest wisdom is not to interrupt it, not to add yourself to it, in the anxious and effortful way of someone who believes that things will not proceed unless attended to, but to add yourself in the other way, the easy way, the way of the leaf on the current, present and light and carried, offering no resistance, requiring no direction, simply here, simply moving as the moving happens, simply resting as the resting becomes possible. The resting is becoming possible now. You can feel it in the way the body has grown a little heavier, a little more settled into whatever is beneath it, as if the space between you and the surface you are lying on has slowly disappeared, as if the distinction between your weight and the bed's support has quietly dissolved into a single quality of warmth and ease, and the body no longer feels like something you are carrying, but like something you have set down somewhere very soft, set down and stepped back from gently, the way you might set down something you have been carrying for a long time, not with relief exactly, because relief implies the memory of effort, but with something even quieter than relief, with a quality that has no name, because it existed before the need for names, before the day and its requirements, before the self that organizes itself around those requirements had assembled itself into its usual shape. The usual shape of the waking self is loosening now, not falling apart, not dissolving into anything frightening or unknown. Simply softening, the way a hand softens when it is finally warm, the way a face softens in sleep, the features releasing the small and habitual tensions of expression that are held all day long without anyone noticing, the small bracing against the world that is so constant it has come to feel like simply having a face. And then, in sleep, the face returns to something earlier and more open, something closer to its own original quality, the quality it had before it learned that the world was something to meet with readiness, with preparation, with the slight set of jaw and the faint alertness of eye that is the waking person's permanent condition. That condition is leaving you now, softly, without announcement. The jaw, if there is any last trace of holding in the jaw, can let that go. The shoulders, if they have been carrying the ceiling this whole time, can give the ceiling back to the ceiling, which is quite capable of supporting itself. The hands can rest, open or loosely closed. It does not matter, simply resting, no longer needed for holding or for doing, or for any of the countless small tasks that hands perform all day long, and that have left their own faint impression of readiness in the muscles and the tendons, an impression that is now, very slowly, like writing left in wet sand as the tide comes in, being smoothed back into something neutral and unheld and simply at rest. The tide that does this is slow, and it is warm, and it is already here. It has been here since you closed your eyes. It has been moving through you in the way that the easiest things move, without announcing themselves, without requiring you to participate, simply proceeding with its own unhurried work, the work of return, of restoration, of bringing back to simplicity what the day had elaborated into complexity, loosening, dissolving, softening, until what remains is not less than what you were, but more truly what you are, the underneath, the quiet, the part that does not need tending. Lao Tzu once described the great and returning quality of all things with a word that is often translated as return, or homecoming, or the going back, and the sense of it is something like the feeling that is finding you now, the feeling of something that has been away for a while coming gently back to where it belongs, not hurrying, not correcting course, simply moving in the natural direction of its own most fundamental inclination, back toward the quiet, back toward the still, back toward the place before effort, the place before the day, the place that is so simple and so old, and so completely, without demand, that the mind, when it finally reaches it, does not recognize it as a destination, but as something more like waking from a dream into a deeper sleep, a settling into a level of rest below the level of rest, a coming to stillness below the first stillness. You are settling into that now. Below the first stillness, there is another stillness, and below that, another. They go down like layers of warm water, each one darker and softer and more completely removed from the surface where the light and the noise and the ordinary events of the day occur. You are sinking through them now, not with any effort, not with any intention, just sinking the way a stone sinks, the way a breath sinks in the lungs at the bottom of an out-breath, the way the eyelids have long since given up their lightness and have become, without your asking, the heaviest and most restful part of you, lying closed with the comfortable permanence of something that has found its place and has no reason to move. The eyes are resting so deeply now, deeper than closed, deeper than dark. They have gone somewhere inside the darkness and are comfortable there, finished with the day's seeing, finished with the tracking and the assessing, and the moving from one thing to the next. That is the seeing person's constant occupation. All of that finished now, quiet now, the eyes turned gently inward, or perhaps simply absent, simply not present in the usual way, which is its own kind of peace, a very particular peace, the peace of an instrument that has been set down at the end of a long use and is resting on the table in the warm room, still and cool and without purpose for now, entirely itself, entirely yourself. That is all that is happening. You are becoming more entirely yourself, which means less of what was added and more of what was always there. The warmth, the slowness, the deep and patient breathing that continues without you, the heartbeat that has never asked for help, the body that knows, better than the waking mind ever has, exactly what it needs and exactly how to get there, moving without effort toward the rest it has been moving toward all day, and now here, nearly there, in the last soft territory between waking and sleeping where the thoughts, if there are thoughts, are not quite thoughts anymore, but something more like the shapes that thoughts leave behind, the outlines of ideas, the traces of feelings, growing fainter and less particular with every slow breath, until they are more like weather than like thinking, more like a distant sound than like a voice, more like the feeling of warmth than like the source of it. Just warmth now, just the slow breath and the warmth and the dark, and something resting in the dark that is you, or was you, or is so completely you that the distinction has grown too small to matter, too quiet to pursue, dissolved back into the larger quiet, the way a sound dissolves into silence, not disappearing exactly, not gone, simply no longer separate from the stillness it was always part of. The water holds you, the dark is warm, the breath moves, just barely, at its own slow pace, without being asked. And the night continues, enormous and unhurried, doing what the night has always done, what it will always do, receiving everything that the day releases, holding it gently, asking nothing, offering only this, only the dark and the warmth and the slow water, and the silence that is not empty but full, full of the soft breathing of all the sleeping things, the breathing of the mountains in their long, slow time, the breathing of the rivers as they move toward the sea, the breathing of the sea itself as it lifts and falls in its own enormous rhythm, and you're breathing among them, one small and peaceful breath among all the breathing, small and peaceful and entirely at home in the dark, at home in the stillness, at home. The words are growing softer now. There is less and less that needs to be said. Only the warmth, only the breathing, only the slow dark water, barely moving, only the quiet, only this, only